talking about talking about retail recruitment. This has been something that the city of Gastonia has been working on for several years, and we've had the opportunity to partner with Retail Coach. Retail Coach is a support for us in retail recruitment. It has really been a great partnership. We have been able to work together on recruitment of things like Whataburger. We are looking at bringing on Raising Cane's. Dave's Hot Chicken just submitted. So very excited for the work that we've been able to do. Charles Parker is our contact with Retail Coach. He has been a tremendous partner with us, and really happy just to kind of do some intro into the retail recruitment and how we approach it and what that looks like. So one of the top questions that I always get is, why do we not have a Trader Joe's? So this is the million-dollar question, and hopefully this will provide some insight into that. And with that being said, I will turn it over to Charles this morning. So thank you, Charles, for being on.
Yes, thanks for having me. Sorry I can't be there in person, but thanks for letting me be the face on the screen this morning. And happy Halloween, everyone. I do have my Yoda ears, but I'll leave them off for the sake of sanity and not getting too many laughs while you're laughing at me. I'll assume it's my jokes and not my looks this morning as we go through some things. As Christy mentioned, I work with Retail Coach. We work with communities across the country to assist with retail recruitment, identify retail opportunities, but then are that active link between site selectors, brokers, developers, and the communities where we work. We are the facilitator, the coach, the matchmaker, if you will, really helping drive site selection in our client communities. I'm located here in Dallas, Texas. We're actually headquartered in Tupelo, Mississippi, the birthplace of Elvis for the fans of the King. But over the last 25 years, we've worked over 850 communities, $600 million in sales tax generation, and some of the biggest brands in the world. Everything from Bass Pro Shops out in West Texas that opened last week to Chick-fil-A's, First Watch, Chipotle's, and everything in between. So excited to talk a little bit today about some overall trends and really how it boils back down to what we're doing in Gastonia and Gaston County as a whole. A little bit about me. Mississippi State Bulldog, so the cowbells are all of our fault. Very sad football season, but we're getting through it. My background's in outdoor recreation and tourism economics. So what is the impact of everything from fishing, hunting, birding, hiking trails, state parks, how people spend their money to do those recreation affects local economies. So that's how I got my start working with cities, really focusing on the impact of those and how do you transform that and the impact into creating an entire economy. Work with Publix, Hobby Lobby, Marshalls, let's say across the Southeast. So excited to talk about some trends. Some shorthand, I do use retail as a very, very broad word. So if I'm saying retail, it loosely refers back to actual retail, Costco, soft goods, hard goods of the world. But then also we lump in restaurants, entertainment concepts like Dave and Buster's or Top Golf of the world, grocery stores, hospitalities. We work with a lot of the major flag brand hotels as well, and then the destination pieces like Bass Pro Shops and things like that. So as I'm saying retail, I'm basically referring to all basic commercial development where anything you go to spend money to have fun or to get something or to eat something. That's kind of what I'm talking about today. And retail really has become more the forefront, especially on this side of COVID, in terms of how it fits into economic development. Everything from sales tax generation to having good places to eat or good daycares even can help you with resident and talent attraction for your business and your corporate recruitment. The quality of life, the same way. Do you have something that people like to go out and spend their time? That third place, it allows you to capitalize your growth across many verticals and really be that component to it because we work with cities that are 2,500 up to 250,000, but I have so many mayors that will come up and tell me, hey, if you give me a Chick-fil-A, I'll never have to run again, which is silly because you can bring in 500 jobs and no one really raises an eyebrow, but you get a Chipotle or a Starbucks or a Dutch Bros and all of a sudden you're everyone's hero. Even though it has a kind of a smaller bottom line monetary impact, it has that component of, oh, we made it. We're now a Chick-fil-A community. So it is funny how retail has really become a component of it. And it's shifted a little bit. We're looking at industry and corporate recruitment. It was always we recruit the businesses will create the people that'll come here. When we have the people, it'll create the demand for the housing and the rooftops, and then the age-old adage of retail follows rooftops. So there's this linear equation, but what we've really seen it switch around and to be a little bit more of a circular model of, like I said, having some of these concepts in town allow you to go out and recruit some corporate pieces or allow you to create places to live that helps drive that housing demand in the inverse direction. So we really are seeing more and more communities focus on retail as a tool for overall economic development. And even, the smaller concepts, like I said, can have a major impact on the bottom line. Bringing in a Target or a Home Depot or Whole Foods can add hundreds of thousands of dollars to the general fund and sales tax and business license components to it. So it really does have an effect up and down the spectrum working with cities, and it's a big reason why we focus on it. Now, to get through some of these trends and talk about a few things, one of the top things that I get asked all the time, apart from Trader Joe's, is talking about, hey, why are you worried about brick and mortar retail when everything is going online? I'm doing all my shopping online and all that component to it. So, we're looking at the last 4 or 5 years of e-commerce sales. It kind of shows here that our overall component to it is really about 15 to 18%. The highest um, estimates of what online sales are of our total retail sales is only about 20%. So that means that 80% of our shopping still happens through brick and mortar stores. So I think that's a big component of why we're still focusing and why we're seeing so many brands continue to expand. And some of the reason behind that is how e-commerce has changed how they're using their stores. So during COVID, Target, Dick's, Lowe's, all the big box stores, they were using their stores for so much more than just walk-in traffic. I know Target peaked at 95% of the orders online went through your local Target. And I know it's still well more than half of your online orders go through your local component to it. So all these brick and mortar stores that they're dropping are basically part fulfillment center, part traditional retail store. Most of Target's new footprint, which is 180,000 square feet, they increased their prototype last year by about 35, 40,000 square feet, but they didn't increase their store footprint size. That's all back end, almost warehouse space on the back. So that's a big reason why we continue to focus on site selection for a lot of these big brands, is because they realize that as they get more online, they need to be more brick and mortar because that's how they reach everyone and have those fast delivery times to compete with the Amazon of the world. So it really is a little bit counterintuitive, but it's, the more we go online, the more site selection becomes important. And just kind of going through a few things of what we're seeing with retail development, it's probably a few things that are going to sound familiar, but the main thing right now, because construction costs are so high to go vertical, we're seeing a lot of single tenant development. So right now, the trendy thing is chicken, coffee, and car washes, the three C's, right? That's what we're seeing the most of. Those are the easiest ones to pencil, easiest ones for someone to build and then sell off into a portfolio as an investment component to it. So that's why we're seeing things like Whataburger and Dave's and Raising Cane's. So those are tenants that are relatively easy to go up rather than power centers or things like that. But it's shifting a lot more than that. What we're seeing on the large scale of things, we're seeing a whole lot of the development shift towards community and entertainment based retail. And I think this was probably one of the coolest, one of the only benefits coming out of COVID was we really honed in and realized how much of a social species that we were. That was taken away from us. And then we've kind of rebounded and say, hey, we're looking for that place that, we haven't fully rebounded in terms of remote work. A lot of jobs are now 30, 40% permanently remote work. So we are missing some of that social aspect. So we're gaining that in some of our retail paces. So when we see retail destinations, so many of them are focused around food halls or places to hang out or kill 3 or 4 hours while you have beer and bring your dog and your kids and they run around. So much of our developments are focused like this, and a lot of our concepts are merging in to single mixed use. Mixed use now has a very different connotation than it did even 5, 10 years ago of what mixed use looks like. So I want to go through a few of these. So you see micro food halls. This is out on 95 out in Smithfield Selma area. But you've seen the big components to it where you have, old mill projects get broken down into 100,000 square foot food halls, where now we're seeing them figure out how to do it on a micro scale of, 12, 15,000 square feet and have 6 or 8 tenants to come through there. We're seeing more concepts pop up with food trucks and basically gravel parking lot, throw up some picnic tables, and all of a sudden it's a cool hip destination, hang up some string lights, and people go gangbusters to go hang out for a few hours for happy hour. Dog park bars. We're seeing more and more of those concepts pop up again because it's really honing in onto that social component of what shopping and dining and entertainment all kind of comes together. And we're seeing these types of tenants really be the centerpiece, with retail coming in and infilling around it in larger scale developments. Indoor waterless water slide parks where you basically take a burlap sack and get launched into a foam pit that are taking down some of these old Walmarts, old converted Target spaces, old big box spaces. We have lost some big brands like Bed Bath and Beyond, and JC Penney spaces are still available. There's still 1 or 2 Kmart's lurking around that are empty spaces. So these are the type of concepts that have figured out how to reutilize that space the best way. And then, of course, pickleball, everything from your semi-professional to your playing pickleball with beer in one hand. It's really is taking over, and all of our kind of partners on the sports industry side of things really believe that it's not just a fad, that is taking market share, and it has leveled out, and will be around to stay for a long time. But this is the type of developments that we're seeing more than ever, where you have the indoor outdoor space, you see garage doors, you see lawn games where it's focused around food and beverage, but it's also around that thing to do, bring your family to focus on. So whenever we see large scale developments, there's always something like this in some form or fashion on a certain scale, because that's what retailers and restaurants are looking for, that built-in foot traffic that they can guarantee to have people come through and spend time. And then individually, just a few things. This was down in Georgia, Chick-fil-A's 2-story concept. So the restaurant is actually on the whole entire second level. They have conveyor belts that lower the food down to the 2 drive-throughs to go through there, and it's both directions. And one of these is for bicycles and Uber Eats and DoorDash. The other one's for your mobile orders or drive-throughs. So even Chick-fil-A is trying to get futuristic with us. A few of their stores no longer have cash registers at all. It's strictly mobile, where you have to use your app to go in and order your food to look at things. So we certainly are changing. It's a very fast-paced environment on the retail and restaurant side of things. But these are the type of concepts that are really driving how site selectors are making their decisions on what makes a good site. It went from, hey, we have to have certain parking requirements, drive-throughs, to now it's, hey, what's our walk up and who's our neighbor and what types of districts are we in? Because we want to have that cross shopping for a lot of those components to it. And then you have concepts like small sliders popping up, realizing that, hey, construction costs are so high. We've got shipping containers. Let's put 4 of them together and make a little burger joint. So this is pressuring a lot of cities across the country of figuring out, what does our code really mean? Is this something that our code allows? Do we want it to allow it? Are there certain districts we can allow things like this? So as tenants are kind of doing their arms race of how do we crank out as many locations as we can, it has ripple effects on the planning side of what are we going to allow, what makes sense for our community. And, if we do allow it, is there certain parts of town that we allow it? So it really is a give and take that we're seeing on a number of these concepts. And then, of course, all the fun entertainment pieces. This is Beat the Bomb. It's kind of like an escape room that nobody escapes, and then you get paint splattered on you. But they're working on scaling to a 10,000 square foot model across the country. So it really is focused on how do we create that experience, because yes, e-commerce is coming around, but that 80% is being fought over on what can you do to have fun to make that experience, because there's no experience involved. If you're just buying toilet paper, you're going to click 3 buttons and have it delivered same day, right? So anything on the retail and restaurant side, it really is about curating that experience, and those are the brands that we're seeing be most effective in their growth. And then last, I threw this up there because, this is about 25, 30,000 square feet of retail space. And 10 years ago, this would have been one big power center strip. We would have had your typical anchors in there in one straight line. Whereas now the development design has changed so much to where you have that amphitheater, you get out your car, park once, and then you beat bop around a couple of the restaurants, you listen to live music. So it really is changing how developers are designing their products and what really goes into making a good site. Another thing I wanted to talk on downtown development, and I think it really applies to what Gaston is doing with the Fuse District in connection with downtown and the stadium and all that component to it. But one of the adages that we have in our office is community development must precede economic development. Communities must invest in their area before they can expect tenants or restaurants or really cool brands to come invest in it. So things like signs of investment, pride of ownership. Downtown Tupelo, we've got our Elvis, of course, as well, with public art all going through there. Basically, if someone's coming through there for the first time and they're looking at it through the eyes of a site selector, is this somewhere that looks like it's being invested in, and do I want to hop on it? And I think this is one of the things that Gastonia has really excelled in the last few years with their investment of the Fuse District and the connectivity between the two. We talked a lot about how do you kind of plan downtown and how do you tenant it out, whereas that green is highest and best use for retail. That's your main frontage, that if people are coming through, you want them to see cool ice cream shops, cool restaurants, nice boutiques that are pop in that you can, oh, I need to pull off and park my car and pick something up, or I'm gonna go check that out. Whereas the secondary stuff are your offices, your service retails, everything from insurance or attorneys, things that you don't necessarily drive by and you're like, oh, I need some litigation today. Let me pull off and talk to my attorney. That's not really the idea that you have with ice cream. So how we're seeing with the planning aspect of downtowns, what goes into tenanting and how you directing the flow of communities is a big part of some of those pieces. And I'll come back to that slide in a minute, but that relates back to, I think, what Gaston has written a really good job of their connectivity. And it reminds me a lot of things like the Freedom Trail, if everyone's been up in Boston, where they have that red line painted throughout the entire city. Idiot proof, my wife would call it Charles proof, that you just look down, follow the red line, and it takes you to every stop of all the American historical sites across Boston, to where it really is directing people to look at and see and take place and keeps them focused on a certain area. Another example of that is for anyone who has the Chip and Joanna Gaines, the Magnolia fans from HGTV, I think. They have the silos in Waco, Texas. And the city of Waco was really struggling with people coming in, going to the silos, and leaving town. No one saw their downtown. Their downtown was really struggling. They couldn't activate that. They had like 8 million people a year coming to the silos, and they couldn't get them to go 6 blocks to their main street. And you kind of see the lines there. So their solution was really unique in a sense that it was so simple. They closed one lane, that left lane that you see in the picture there, to parking, and they painted them, put up barricades, and created a literal yellow brick road to connect their downtown to the silos that people are looking at, and they're like, well, what's down here? Why must be something going on if they're blocking off and creating a pathway for us. They put up campaigns for some of the empty store spaces between and say, hey, we're remaking this. We're imagining come be an investment part. And it was a really successful campaign. They shut down one of the alleyways, had it painted, and it kind of organically became kind of the de facto Waco logo. You kind of see the logo on the top right there. That came after they let somebody just go and kind of go wild on painting this alleyway. And it really became something that the local community took ownership on for that connectivity. So I see that in progress now, everything from the stadium to downtown, of how you create that really strong district, which is super exciting to see in real time come to life. And then lastly, I know I'm throwing a lot at you here on a early Friday morning, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the data and how we use that for recruitment and how we're pitching Gastonia. So one of the things that we do is really look at the shopping habits and what's the draw of Gastonia. Look at their trade area, not just look at the city population or the county population or how many people are within a certain minutes, because people travel different things and times for work. Just because you live in one area doesn't mean you shop in that area. So we do cell phone data analysis. So this is a geofence of the stores around Cox Road, and it kind of shows the home location of where people are most shopping in that area. So it kind of gives us a much wider berth of what's the Gastonia proper market look like. So we take those heat maps and we convert it over to, you know, our overall primary trade area to say, hey, this is people who are shopping in Gastonia. This is the piece of pie that having a business in Gastonia allows you to go after on a regular basis. So instead of just focusing on the city population, we're looking at our watershed of 180,000 people. That's the pie that businesses get to go after. We're having a proper or a project here in Gastonia to look at. And some of the highlights that we look at for retail site selection, obviously sheer population, and that's a good number to have. But another one that is kind of looked over a lot is median age. And retail really likes to have median age at 40 or below. And we are right there at right at 39 at median, 40 at average. And that's important because I have a 2.5-year-old daughter. That's kind of my age bracket now. Of that's the young families aspect, and there's no bigger budget suck than children, right? That's where you're spending all your money. That's where all my money goes right now with my daughter. So that's a big piece of what retailers look at that maybe goes overlooked is, hey, what's the average age? Do you have young and upcoming families? Do you have new housing growth? And those are a lot of things that Gastonia is checking the box. Stepping back, Charlotte has exploded in every direction until now, and it's really been to the north. It's gone down into the to South Carolina, gone out to the east, and the west is kind of the final frontage for Charlotte to continue to expand. And we're just now kind of coming into our own, or people are figuring it out that hey, there is a really cool market out here. There is a lot of growth. We're always going to have that 3 or 4 minute drive of greenery, which is really nice because it does separate us. But I think it was a little bit of a barrier for growth over the last 15, 20 years. And I think people are really willing to go past that and say, all right, we've got this western frontier of Charlotte, and the housing growth shows it. The trends and uptick in interest for retailers and tenants that we're seeing is reflective of that. But it's really a big component that I think we're right on the jumping off point of Gastonia taking a really big next step. And because the city's been proactive, they've got a lot of the infrastructure in place and a lot of the community development in place to really handle it. So I'm excited to see the next steps for it. But I wanted to hone down just for 1 minute as well and talk about, yes, we look at, you know, 180,000 people that we have, that's enough for a lot of brands to come look at. But when you come down to it, it still gets down to sites and alternatives. And that's what ultimately gets you a new grocery store or a new restaurant is you're not just competing in Charlotte. They're only dropping 15, 20, 25 locations across the country. We really are competing across the country for some of these brands because when they do go to real estate committee, it's part of a slide deck like this, and they're looking at 40 or 50 options, and you get maybe 90 seconds for your community to get checked out. So if you don't hit the very strict criteria check marks, they'll pass on one that do. So I wanted to highlight this because it does kind of point out the three really main nodes of Gastonia, and they're all about 50,000 people. That's 3 mile radius for the three parts. So we have Cox Road, kind of downtown, and then South Gastonia. They're all about the same in terms of population, but they all look very different on paper. So Cox Road is where everybody wants to be, right? That's where the most retail action is. You've got 50,000 people. Your average income is 90,000, which is about 20,000 more of your average income than if you go just 3 miles west and have downtown be your central component to it. So you kind of start seeing how an outsider with not a ton of local information in Gastonia can look at this and say, hey, I need to be more towards Cock Roads, less towards downtown. Or for a grocery store looking at South Gastonia, again, about 50,000 people, but the average incomes jumped to about 100,000. So I'm saying if I'm a high-end grocer, I want to be on the south end, but then my employees are basically cut in half. Am I going to have enough daytime population to get the cool restaurants to come with me as a grocery store? Am I going to get a developer that's going to be willing to go and buy all that? So we really are doing this balancing act of promoting the area as a whole, but then also honing down and doing the fine tuning on, hey, is this site on Robinwood going to work out the same way something just off East Franklin would? And these are the types of decisions that go into, hey, where's Dave's Hot Chicken going to go? Where are we going to put that Whataburger? Or where are we going to put that Cane's? These are all things that they have to take into account as we kind of fine tune the site selection even within the city. And what's funny about this, as Christy mentioned, we've been working with the city for a number of years. Even 2 or 3 years ago, these numbers were much more spread out. The income disparity was probably five, maybe 10,000 more. The employees were probably down. I know I went and updated this map. I think I added 5 or 6,000 employees to each of the circles. So they really are kind of converging to a sense where we are kind of getting that bit of a more of a homogenous market. So we are certainly moving in the right direction. There's data showing that we're close to being able to pull off one of those brands that says, hey, if I'm coming to Gastonia, it's got to be Cox Road. I think more so than ever, we're getting more brands to consider. I'm coming to Gastonia and I'd prefer to be at Cox Road, but what else do you have? I think there's some other markets, some secondary nodes elsewhere. And I think that is really the next step that Gastonia is poised to take. And I think a big part of that is obviously the 6,000 residential units that are in the planning pipeline to come through it. So this is a lot of pieces that when Kirsty and we go to a retail event and we're talking with developers talking about, hey, what's next for Gastonia? The rooftops, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, retail follows rooftops is still a big component of it. And this is what we're showing aloud to say, hey, people are figured it out that this is a great place to live and that there's going to be a whole lot more demand that we're looking at over the next 5, 10 years as this all gets built out. So we really are poised for additional growth on the residential side and the retail component. It really all works together, and it's kind of our job working with Christie to make sure that we're weaving that narrative and casting a wide net for those brands that are aware and that are really motivated, and that, hey, this isn't a 3 or 5 year out process. This is you need to get to Gastonia as soon as possible. So I know that was a lot of information thrown at once, but didn't want to overhaul your meeting too much. I'm happy to answer any questions or revisit any of those things that may have stood out to you.